The town was quiet that morning, the kind of place where everyone knew each other's names and nothing ever really changed. Gossip here traveled faster than the wind, so when the news broke that the Miller twins were getting married, everyone was curious. But when they found out who they were marrying, the entire town couldn't stop talking. Ethan and Evan Miller, identical twin brothers, were the pride of the town. Handsome, kind, and successful, they ran their family's furniture business. They did everything together, from dressing alike to finishing each other's sentences. But then came Amara, and everything changed. Ethan met her first at a charity event. Amara was a black woman from a nearby town, with warm brown eyes and a calm, kind smile. He was drawn not just to her beauty, but to her heart. She spent the day laughing with underprivileged children, listening to their stories as if they were her own family. Ethan was captivated. He went back to volunteer the next week, just hoping to see her again. When he introduced her to Evan, his brother smiled and said, "She's special." Soon the three of them were inseparable. But as the days passed, something unexpected happened. Both brothers fell deeply in love with her. They tried to ignore it, but the feeling only grew stronger. Amara, too, had grown fond of them. She admired their close bond and their humility. In their kindness, she saw a reflection of her late father. One evening, the twins sat on their porch watching the sunset. "We can't both love her," Evan said quietly. Ethan nodded. "I know, but she deserves honesty." The next day, they told her the truth. Amara didn't get angry or confused. Instead, she said gently, "Love doesn't have to be complicated if it's built on respect. I love you both for who you are, not for what people will think." After weeks of honest conversations, she made her choice. She wanted to marry them both and build one life together. When the news spread, the town didn't just talk, it laughed. "Those twins lost their minds," one man scoffed at the bar. "A black girl, both of them? What kind of nonsense is that?" Another sneered. Even childhood friends turned their backs. Their parents were furious. "You're going to destroy our family's reputation," their father yelled. But the twins stood firm. "We found love," Ethan said, "and we're not letting it go." Amara tried to be strong, but the whispers hurt. Strangers stared. Shopkeepers ignored her. But she never complained, holding on to the hope that time would change their hearts. Their wedding day was quiet. No grand decorations, just a few close friends under a big oak tree. Amara wore a simple white dress. The twins wore matching gray suits. When the officiant asked, "Do you take her to be your wife?" both Ethan and Evan said, "We do," in perfect unison. From a distance, a small group of townspeople watched, whispering and laughing openly. "This is a circus," one woman declared. But the twins didn't hear them. They only had eyes for Amara. As they walked back to their home, hand in hand, they felt free. That night, Amara said softly, "I know the world will never understand us, but love doesn't need to be understood. It just needs to be real." Ethan smiled. "Let them laugh. One day they'll see what we see." And as the three of them laughed together, it wasn't the sound of mockery or judgment. It was the sound of peace. Little did the town know that in just 2 years their laughter would turn to shame, awe, and regret, because the love they mocked was about to become the most beautiful story their town had ever seen. The first few months after Amara's wedding were quiet, but they certainly weren't peaceful. Every time she stepped out of the house, she could feel eyes following her. At the grocery store, whispers floated around her like a cold wind. Some people refused to serve her while others just stared. Children would point, and their parents would quickly pull them away. Even the neighbors across the street, who once greeted the twins with warm smiles, now pretended not to see them at all. Despite the hostility, Amara carried herself with a calm dignity. She would offer a smile, say, "Good morning," and walk on. But inside, her heart was breaking. Some nights she'd sit by the window, staring into the darkness as silent tears rolled down her cheeks. Ethan often found her there, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. "Don't let them get to you," he'd whisper. "They just don't understand you yet." One night, Amara looked up at him and said softly, I don't need them to understand me. I just wish they could see that I'm human too. Evan sat beside her and held her hand. One day, he said, they'll know exactly who you are. You just have to keep being you. And that's exactly what she did. Instead of hiding away, Amara started helping others. She noticed that many poor families in town couldn't afford books or school supplies for their children. So she began collecting old books and teaching kids for free in their small living room. At first, only 2 children came, both shy, both curious. But word spread fast. Within weeks, 10 children were sitting cross-legged on the floor every evening, listening to Amara's gentle voice explain math and reading. Ethan built a few wooden benches from leftover wood, and Evan painted a sign for their gate. Free classes for children. All are welcome. Slowly, something started to change. The same neighbors who once whispered now peeked curiously from across the street. They saw the kids laughing, heard the lessons through the open windows, and noticed the warmth that seemed to follow Amara wherever she went. One afternoon, an older woman stopped her on the street. It was Mrs. Green, the same woman who once said cruel things behind her back. "You teach those children yourself?" she asked awkwardly. Amara smiled kindly. "Yes, ma'am. They're bright kids. They just need a little help." Mrs. Green hesitated, then whispered, "My grandson could use that. He's been struggling." "Bring him tomorrow," Amara said without a second thought. "We'll help him together." Soon the small living room couldn't hold them all, and the classes moved to the community hall. Her small idea had turned into a free learning center. But it wasn't just the children who were learning. The town began learning too, learning to look beyond prejudice and judgment. The twins' furniture business, inspired by Amara's creativity, also began to thrive. When reporters came to interview them about their success, Evan just smiled and pointed to Amara. "It's not us, it's her." But not everyone was happy. Jealousy replaced the laughter. "They're just lucky," some grumbled. Destiny, however, had other plans. One stormy night, a flood swept through the town. Without hesitation, the twins opened their doors, offering shelter to anyone who needed it. Amara organized everything: cooking meals, comforting children, and caring for the elderly. She didn't sleep for 2 days straight. When rescue workers arrived, they found dozens of families safe inside. The local news captured an image of Amara wrapping a blanket around a frightened child, with the headline, "The woman the town once rejected, now its greatest helper." The next morning, people came to their door, not with judgment, but with gratitude. "Thank you," they said. "We were wrong about you." Amara simply replied, "You don't have to say sorry. Just be kind to someone else." For the first time, the mocking laughter had stopped, replaced by whispers of respect. As the sun broke through the clouds, it seemed the whole town had changed with it. Ethan turned to his brother on the porch and said, "Remember the day they laughed?" Evan nodded, a faint smile on his face. "They're not laughing now." Inside, Amara was humming softly, her kindness having melted the coldness that once surrounded them. But this was only the beginning. The woman they had mocked would soon become the person they all admired, the one they would never forget. And in the years to come, every single person who had laughed would look back with deep regret in their hearts. 2 years. That's how long it had been since the whispers and laughter followed Amara down the street. But now those same streets were filled with a different sound. The cheerful calls of Miss Amara," from children running up to hug her. The small town that once judged her had transformed. Her humble tutoring sessions had blossomed into the Miller Community Learning Center, a vibrant hub of learning and laughter standing proudly in the town park. It was a testament to hope, its walls covered in children's drawings and heartfelt thank you notes. Amara was still the same gentle woman with her simple dresses and kind smile. She didn't carry herself like someone who had single-handedly changed a town. She just lived with quiet grace, one good deed at a time. One sunny morning, the town gathered in the square for a special appreciation event. The mayor was honoring those who had helped unite the community after a devastating flood. Everyone knew Amara and the twins, Ethan and Evan, would be recognized, but no one was prepared for what was about to unfold. As the twins stood beside her, the mayor's voice boomed across the square. 2 years ago, he began, we were a divided town, filled with judgment, but one act of love changed everything. He paused, his gaze finding them in the crowd. I'm talking about the Miller family, Ethan, Evan, and Amara. Thunderous applause erupted. Amara, unused to the spotlight, whispered, they didn't have to do this. But Evan just squeezed her hand and said, you deserve every word. The mayor continued, his voice filled with emotion. This woman, whom many of us once mocked, has built a future for our children. She reminded us that love has no color, that unity is stronger than prejudice. The crowd rose to their feet, their clapping growing louder. Tears welled in Amara's eyes. All she had ever wanted was peace, not praise. And yet, here were the very people who once shunned her now cheering for her. Then the unexpected happened. An elderly woman, Mrs. Green, stepped forward, trembling. She was the one who had forbidden her grandson from attending Amara's classes. Her voice quivered as she spoke. Amara, I said terrible things. I judged you. I was wrong. I'm so sorry. A hush fell over the square. Without a moment's hesitation, Amara walked to Mrs. Green and took her hands. We all learn, she said softly. What matters is that we grow. That single act of forgiveness shattered the last remaining wall of prejudice in the crowd. One by one, others came forward, offering hugs, apologies, and gratitude. Later that evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange and pink, the three of them walked home. Remember when they used to laugh? Evan asked quietly. Amara smiled faintly. Yes, but I also remember when they started smiling back. She looked at the horizon. I used to think I didn't belong here. But maybe I was meant to teach something bigger than reading and writing. Ethan put a hand on her shoulder. You did more than teach, he said. You healed. Sitting on their porch under the soft lantern glow, Amara looked at her husbands. Do you ever regret marrying me? They both laughed. Never, Ethan said. We only regret one thing. Amara raised an eyebrow. Evan finished the thought, that people didn't meet you sooner. In the end, it wasn't the town that changed Amara. It was her light that changed them all. The whispers turned to applause, hate turned to harmony, and the woman they once laughed at became the reason they all learned to love again. The morning air was calm, filled with the gentle sound of birds and the distant laughter of children playing near the new Miller Community Learning Center. 2 years had passed since the storm, since the laughter turned to silence, and since the town had finally seen the truth. The once judged love between Ethan, Evan, and Amara had become something greater, a story that people now shared with pride. Amara stood in front of the center that morning, her heart full as she watched children run through the doors, books in hand. The same people who once whispered insults now trusted her with their children. Parents waved as they passed, some stopping to thank her for changing their kids' lives. She would always smile and say, "They're the reason I do this." Life had changed in ways none of them expected. The twins' handcrafted furniture business, inspired by Amara's artistic designs, had expanded beyond the town. People everywhere wanted Miller originals. But Ethan and Evan never forgot where it all began, with a woman everyone once laughed at. That day, a letter arrived at the cafe, addressed to Mrs. Amara Miller. She opened it slowly, her hands trembling. It was from a local magazine. The letter read, "We are honoring women who have inspired real change in their communities. You have been chosen as Woman of the Year for your extraordinary compassion, leadership, and courage." Tears filled her eyes. She had never wanted recognition, but she couldn't help but feel deeply moved. She walked home that evening with the letter tucked close to her heart. When she told Ethan and Evan, both men smiled with pride. Ethan said softly, "We told you one day the world would see what we saw." Evan added, "And when they do, they'll regret ever laughing." The award ceremony was held a few weeks later in the city. The mayor himself came to present the award. As Amara walked onto the stage wearing a simple cream-colored dress, the cameras flashed. When the applause quieted, she began to speak, her voice calm and steady. 2 years ago, she said, many people laughed when my husbands and I got married. They said it would never last. They said love like ours didn't belong in this world. But love isn't about what people approve of, it's about what you give. I gave love when I had nothing else to offer, and love gave everything back to me. The room fell silent. She smiled gently. To everyone who ever judged me, I forgive you, because your laughter pushed me to become stronger. It taught me that kindness grows best in the soil of misunderstanding. When she finished, the crowd rose in a standing ovation. Even the people who had once mocked her were now clapping until their hands ached. After the ceremony, a reporter asked, "Mrs. Miller, what would you say to those who once doubted you?" Amara paused and said simply, "I don't want them to feel guilty. I just hope they learn that love can be laughed at. It only grows stronger when it is true." Back in town, her words spread like wildfire. The local newspaper ran a headline, "The woman they laughed at now teaches the world about love." Over the next few years, Amara and the twins continued to give back, building homes, creating scholarships, and organizing charity drives. Each time someone asked them why, Ethan would say, "Because once someone showed us what real love looks like." And slowly, the town that once lived in prejudice became known for its unity. The Miller family became a living symbol of hope. One sunny afternoon, sitting on the porch, Amara looked out at the road. She saw children of every race walking together, laughing freely. She turned to the twins and smiled. "Do you hear that?" she asked. Evan listened. "The kids?" "No," she said softly. "The laughter. It's different now." Ethan looked at her, confused. "Different how?" She smiled faintly. "Because now, it's not mocking. It's joyful." The three of them sat quietly, watching the sunset, the golden light peaceful on their faces. The world had changed because they refused to give up on love. Years later, people still told their story, the twins who defied the world, the woman who melted hearts, and the town that learned to love again. For those who had once laughed, the regret never fully faded. But in that regret they found understanding. Because Amara's story wasn't about revenge. It was about how real love doesn't demand to be accepted. It teaches others how to accept. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, Amara whispered to herself, "They laughed once, but now, they finally understand."